should have known something was wrong when the street went quiet. 1 minute, Riverside Drive was bustling with trick-or-treaters, parents chatting on sidewalks, porch lights blazing. The next, I was alone with my daughter Sophie, standing in a pool of streetlight that felt suddenly very small. "Daddy, where did everyone go?" Sophie's voice was muffled by her butterfly mask. I checked my phone. 8:47 p.m. We'd only been out for an hour. The street shouldn't be this empty, this dark. Half the porch lights had gone out while I wasn't looking. Maybe it's getting too late. Let's hit one more house and head home. But I was lying. Something felt deeply wrong, like the air itself had thickened. Even the October wind had stopped. The only house still lit was the corner property, the one with the elaborate decorations. You know the type, the family that goes all out, turning their yard into a graveyard, speakers hidden in bushes playing creaky sounds. Except as we approached, I realized I'd never seen this house decorated before. In fact, I wasn't sure I'd seen this house at all, and I'd lived here for 6 years. 2 figures stood on the porch, perfectly still. At first, I thought they were mannequins, a man and woman in vintage clothing holding antique trick-or-treat bags. But as we climbed the steps, their heads turned smoothly to track our movement. "Trick or treat," Sophie chirped, holding out her plastic pumpkin. The woman's painted smile stretched wider. Too wide. "Oh, how precious. Richard, look at this one." The man stepped forward, and I noticed his feet didn't quite touch the ground. "Exquisite. She'll do nicely." "Do for what?" I pulled Sophie back. "For the collection, of course." The woman gestured to the house. Through the window, I could see dozens of small figures arranged on shelves, all in costumes, all perfectly still. "We're leaving." I grabbed Sophie's hand. "But Daddy, my candy." The man laughed, a sound like wind through dry leaves. "Oh, you misunderstand. We're not giving treats tonight. We're collecting them." The front door swung open behind them, revealing darkness that seemed to pulse and breathe. Inside, I heard what sounded like children singing, but the words were backwards. Wrong. "Run, Sophie. Now." We bolted down the steps, but the sidewalk stretched like taffy beneath our feet. Each step forward pulled us 2 steps back. Sophie was crying, her butterfly wings flapping uselessly. "You can't leave," the woman called. "Not until you've paid the toll. Every Halloween, we collect one perfect child. Your daughter has been chosen. Take me instead." They laughed in unison. "You? You're far too old, too bitter. Children have such sweet souls, especially on Halloween when they believe in magic." The darkness from the house began seeping out, pooling around our feet like cold oil, climbed up our legs, and Sophie screamed. Her hand was fading in mine, becoming translucent. "No!" I dropped to my knees, holding her tight. "Sophie, baby, stay with me. Don't believe in them. They're not real if you don't believe." "But Daddy, I can see through you too." She was right. My hands were becoming transparent. We were both being pulled into whatever nightmare dimension these things came from. Then I remembered something Sophie had said earlier while getting ready. "Daddy, if monsters are real on Halloween, maybe angels are too." "Sophie, remember what Grandma used to say? About guardian angels?" Through her tears, she nodded and started whispering the prayer her grandmother had taught her before she died. The one I'd thought was just superstition. The darkness recoiled like it had been burned. The collectors screamed, their perfect faces cracking like porcelain. The house behind them flickered, and for a moment, I saw what it really was, a rotting structure that had burned down decades ago. "Impossible!" the woman shrieked, reaching for us with fingers that had become claws. But Sophie's voice grew stronger, and suddenly the street blazed with light. Every porch light flared on at once. The sound of normal Halloween returned. Laughter, doorbells, life. The collectors were gone. The corner lot was empty, just an overgrown plot where a house had burned down in 1978, taking a family with it. I knew this because I'd looked it up the next day. Sophie doesn't remember much, thank God. But I'll never forget those things, those collectors. And every Halloween since, when we passed that empty lot, I swear I can see them standing in the ruins, waiting. They're still collecting. And someday, when the right child walks by, one who doesn't know the prayer, doesn't have someone to hold them back, they'll succeed. I've tried to warn other parents. They think I'm crazy, but I know what I saw. And I know they're still there, in the spaces between light and dark, waiting for Halloween to make them solid again, waiting to complete their collection. I knew taking the job at Holloway's Haunted Harvest was a mistake the moment I saw the employee handbook. Rule number 7, never break character, even if a customer seems genuinely distressed. Rule number 18, the corn maze closes at midnight. Anyone still inside after that is no longer our responsibility. Rule number 31, if you see yourself in the attraction, do not approach or acknowledge it. What's Rule 31 about? I asked Mr. Holloway during orientation. His weathered face creased into what might have been a smile. Sometimes the maze plays tricks. Just ignore anything unusual and you'll be fine. I needed the money for college, so I ignored my instincts. They assigned me to the slaughterhouse section, where I'd jump out with a rubber chainsaw and chase people through hanging plastic sheets smeared with fake blood. The first 2 weeks went smoothly. Families screamed, laughed, took selfies with me afterward. Normal haunted house stuff. Then came Halloween night. The crowds were insane. We were supposed to close at midnight, but people kept coming. Around 11:30, something felt different. The other actors were whispering, kept checking their phones. What's wrong? I asked Derek, who played a deranged butcher. Someone's in the maze who shouldn't be. His face paint couldn't hide how pale he'd gone. Someone wearing an employee costume, but all the employees are accounted for. So, probably just a customer who bought a similar outfit. You don't understand. It's wearing your costume. Exactly. And your mask. And it has your walk, your mannerisms. Other customers think it's you. My blood went cold. I'd been in my section all night. At 11:45, Mr. Holloway's voice crackled over our earpieces. Everyone out. Now, leave through the emergency exits. But I couldn't. As I headed for the exit, I saw myself at the end of the corridor. Same torn jumpsuit, same chainsaw, same everything. It stood perfectly still, facing away from me. Hey, I called out. Turned around. Under the mask was my face, but wrong. Too pale like wax. The eyes were black pits that seemed to go on forever. It smiled with my mouth and started walking toward me with my exact gait. I ran deeper into the attraction instead of toward the exit. Stupid but pure instinct. Behind me, I heard my own footsteps following, perfectly synchronized with mine but half a second delayed. I burst through the plastic sheets into the corn maze. The stalks were higher than they should be, and the paths had changed. I'd worked here for 2 weeks, I knew every turn, but nothing was where it should be. You can't run from yourself, my voice called from somewhere in the maze. I'm what you become if you stay past midnight. All of us are. All. That's when I saw them. Dozens of figures standing in the corn, all wearing employee costumes from different years, different decades. Some were decomposed, others fresh. All had those same black pit eyes. Every Halloween, Holloway's needs new workers, my doppelganger explained, getting closer. Real ones get replaced by better versions. Versions that never tire, never complain, never leave. I checked my phone, 11:57. I crashed through the corn, not caring about the paths anymore. The stalks cut my arms, my face. Behind me, multiple footsteps followed. Not just mine anymore, all the replacements were coming. The edge of the maze appeared suddenly. I could see the parking lot, my car. But at the entrance stood Mr. Holloway. "I'm sorry, son," he said, and his eyes were those same black pits. "I tried to warn you with the rules, but corporate needs their workers. Has since 1978 when I made the deal." 11:59. I shoulder-checked him, sending him sprawling. Sprinted for my car. Keys shaking in my hand. Engine starting. In the rearview mirror, I saw them all standing at the edge of the property, unable to cross. My doppelganger pulled off its mask, revealing my face melting like candle wax. It mouthed something I couldn't hear. I drove home, called in sick the next day. When I went to collect my final paycheck, Holloway's haunted harvest was gone. Empty field. No corn maze, no buildings, nothing. The locals claimed it had been abandoned for decades. But I know it'll be back next Halloween. It always comes back. With new workers who don't read the rules carefully enough, who stay just a minute too late. Sometimes I drive by that empty field, and every time I see him standing in the weeds. My replacement, still wearing my face, still holding that chainsaw, waiting for next Halloween, waiting for me to come back. Because part of me, the part that stayed past midnight, is still there. And every Halloween, I feel it pulling me back, stronger each year. This Halloween, I might not be able to resist. If you've come this far, I want to take a moment to thank you for listening to my stories. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video so you can explore more content like this. It helps the channel a lot. Thank you. Now for the next story. I inherited my grandmother's house last September, just in time for Halloween. She'd lived alone on the outskirts of Millbrook for 40 years, and when I was young, I remembered her being oddly strict about Halloween night. No trick-or-treaters ever came to her door. The house was too far from town, but she would still prepare elaborate candy displays, light candles in every window, and sit in her parlor from sunset to sunrise waiting. The lawyer who handled her estate mentioned she'd left specific instructions about Halloween. There was a sealed envelope marked October 31st important that I was to open only on that date. I thought it was just grandmother being eccentric, the way she'd always been. I spent October cleaning out the house, finding strange things in every room. Salt lines across doorways that had been there so long they'd stained the wood. Iron horseshoes above every window. Mirrors hung at odd angles that made no decorative sense. In the attic, I discovered dozens of journals, all documenting Halloween nights going back decades. Each entry was nearly identical. Lists of times, all between midnight and 3 a.m., followed by the single word, successful. Halloween arrived gray and cold. I opened grandmother's envelope at sunset, as instructed. Inside was a single page in her shaky handwriting. It explained that something had been coming to the house every Halloween for over a century. The original owners had made a bargain with it, one night of entry per year in exchange for prosperity and protection. But the thing that visited had to be contained within the house from midnight to 3 a.m., never allowed to venture beyond the property line, or it would consume every child in town. I laughed. It was absurd. A Halloween prank from beyond the grave. But I found myself following her instructions anyway. Light candles in every window. Set out the candy in precise patterns she diagrammed. Sit in the parlor. Wait. Do not sleep. Do not leave the house. And whatever you do, do not look directly at what enters. At 11:59, the temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. My breath came out in clouds. The candles flickered but didn't extinguish. At midnight exactly, the front door opened despite being locked. I kept my eyes fixed on the floor as grandmother had instructed. Something entered. I could feel it more than hear it. The air grew thick, oppressive, like breathing through wet wool. The floorboards creaked under weight that seemed to shift and move in impossible ways. It moved through the house methodically. I heard it in the kitchen, then upstairs, then somehow in the basement and attic simultaneously. The candy I'd set out disappeared piece by piece, though I never saw what took it. The mirrors throughout the house began reflecting things that weren't there. Glimpses of children in costumes from different eras, all walking backward, all with hollow eyes. At 1 a.m., it entered the parlor where I sat. The darkness in my peripheral vision writhed and pulsed. Every instinct screamed at me to look, to see what cast the shadow that fell across me despite the candles providing no source for it. But I kept my eyes down, counting the flowers in the carpet pattern. 17 roses, 17 roses, 17 roses. Something cold touched my shoulder. Not a hand, I don't know what it was. It felt like being touched by frozen static, by the space between TV channels. My skin crawled and burned simultaneously. I understood then why grandmother had done this for 40 years. Why someone had to. The alternative, this thing loose in the town on Halloween night, was unthinkable. At 2 a.m. it spoke. Not with words, but directly into my mind. It showed me what it was, what it could do if released. Images of Halloween nights in other towns where no one knew to contain it. Streets littered with small costumes, suddenly empty. Parents searching frantically for children who had simply ceased. It fed on innocence, on the joy and wonder that Halloween brought to young hearts. One night a year, it was allowed to taste that essence, but only what was offered, only within these walls. At 2:45, it began to resist. The house groaned and shuddered. Pictures fell from walls. Windows cracked. It knew I was new, untested. It pressed against the barriers grandmother had built over decades, testing for weakness. The salt lines glowed faintly red. The iron horseshoes hummed like tuning forks. I held my position, muscles cramping, eyes burning from staring at the same spot for 3 hours. 17 roses. 17 roses. At 3 a.m., it left as suddenly as it had come. The door closed. The temperature returned to normal. The candles steadied. I finally looked up and saw the parlor was covered in a thin layer of frost that melted as I watched, leaving no trace of moisture. I understood then that I couldn't sell the house. Couldn't leave. Someone had to maintain the tradition. Someone had to hold the line every Halloween. It's been 5 years now. Every Halloween, I follow grandmother's ritual exactly. And every year it grows stronger, angrier, more insistent. The barriers hold, but barely. Last year, it nearly broke through at 2:47. The year before, it found a crack in the salt line that took me hours to repair. I started looking for an heir, someone to take over when I'm gone. Someone who will believe enough to continue the tradition. Because if no one's here next Halloween, if the house stands empty on October 31st, those barriers won't hold. And every child out trick-or-treating will learn what happens when ancient bargains are broken. That's it for this video. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. It really does help the channel a lot. See you soon.